Hello, today we're in Chapter 5, Healing and Wholeness, Section 2, The Voice for God. So, healing is not creating, it is reparation. The Holy Spirit promotes healing by looking beyond it to what the children of God were before healing was needed and will be when they have been healed. This alteration of the time sequence should be quite familiar, because it is already similar to the shift in the perception of time that the miracle introduces. The Holy Spirit is the motivation for miracle-mindedness, the decision to heal the separation by letting it go. Your will is still in you because God placed it in your mind, and although you can keep it asleep, you cannot obliterate it. God Himself keeps your will alive by transmitting it from His mind to yours as long as there is time. The miracle itself is a reflection of this union of will between Father and Son. I think what I want to look at there is about time. The alteration of the time sequence should be quite familiar because it is very similar to the shift in the perception of time that the miracle introduces. So I'm going to back up a little bit. Healing is not creating, it is reparation. The Holy Spirit promotes healing by looking beyond it to what the children of God were before healing was needed and will be when they have been healed. So I've had my attention taken to this a lot lately, the alteration of the time sequence. So I believe I'm in time, I'm believing I'm seeing all these facets of time and space, and my attention gets taken to, I really feel this, what we were before, all equal, beautiful children of God, before there was a need for healing, what we are eternally, what we, in a sense, will be again someday, and to have this become prominent. That's the alteration of the time sequence. That's where the focus gets taken more and more. So then, as I seem to be moving through time and experiencing facets of space, I start to not care as much. It's subtle, it's little at first. I'm still up to my same old tricks of distorted egoic thinking, but something important has shifted, and I realize that none of this matters. It matters that I focus on what is real, to what we all were before there was a need for healing. But these individual aspects of time and space do not matter like I once thought they did. So there's a great relief there. This alteration of the time sequence should be quite familiar because it is very similar to the shift in the perception of time that the miracle introduces. Yeah. So that's here for us always. Our focus can be taken away from the fake to what's real. And then we kind of put the fake in the hands of Spirit to handle. We're not trying to control or manage the fake anymore. Okay, the Holy Spirit is the Spirit of joy. He is the call to return with which God blessed the minds of His separated sons. This is the vocation of the mind. The mind had no calling until the separation, because before that it had only being, and would not have understood the call to right thinking. The Holy Spirit is God's answer to the separation, the means by which the atonement heals until the whole mind returns to creating. So what draws me in there is, He is the call, the Holy Spirit is the call to return with which God blessed the minds of His separated sons. This, to me, seems more prominent and more important than anything I think I would see in another mind. Like, we have the perception that my mind is different than your mind, although we are one in mind. But to me, more and more, the most important thing about what I see as your mind is the call to return that you've been blessed with. And as I see that, I'm aware of the call to return that I've been blessed with, and I remember that I've been blessed. I haven't been hated, rejected, abandoned, thrown into a world that doesn't exist. Actually, we've all been blessed, and that call to return is still here. And it's present in everybody. So we start ignoring the surfaces and just knowing, like, when I look at you, I see the call to return. Okay, the principle of atonement and the separation began at the same time. When the ego was made, God placed in the mind the call to joy. This call is so strong that the ego always dissolves at its sound. That is why you must choose to hear one of two voices within you. One you made yourself, and that one is not of God, but the other is given you by God, who asks you only to listen to it. The Holy Spirit is in you in a very literal sense. His is the voice that calls you back to where you were before and will be again. It is possible even in this world to hear only that voice and no other. It takes effort and great willingness to learn. It is the final lesson that I learned, and God's sons are as equal as learners as they are as sons. It is the final lesson I learned, and God's sons are as equal as learners as they are as sons. I've been taken to the cross a bunch of times lately, and I'll be kind of asking Jesus, like, now that I learned that everything that comes to me I wanted, did you want that crucifixion in a way? Did it give you a sense of separate identity and victimhood? Where were you when you're learning? And if it was the final lesson that you learned, I wonder when you learned it. And I know only ego asks questions, so in a sense I don't need any of that answered, because none of that actually happened. It's all part of a past that is not real. The light, undifferentiated light, is real, and in that light there are no questions. But I just get a feeling of how the process is for each one of us, and in a recognition that if I am in a situation of perceived victimization, I always wanted it. And the reason I wanted it is any identity is satisfying. And so if you're trying to keep your identity separate because you think your safety is in appearing separate, you don't care what you appear as, or like ego doesn't care. It'll appear as anything as long as it can be separate and hold on to the illusion, the separation, which it thinks is its safety. So I'm not capable of judging Jesus, but I do, looking at victimization, that comes to mind. And, I wonder, well, how did your last lesson unfold for you? The answer about an illusion, because that's illusion too, is not as important as my just taking my lesson today and learning what's here for me to learn. Okay. It is the final lesson I learned, to hear only the Holy Spirit's voice. And God's sons are as equal as learners as they are as sons. That equality is so important, because wherever my thinking is distorted, I'm seeing inequality. Okay, you are the kingdom of heaven, but you have let the belief in darkness enter your mind, and so you need a new light. The Holy Spirit is the radiance that you must let banish the idea of darkness. His is the glory before which dissociation falls away, and the kingdom of heaven breaks through into its own. Before the separation, you did not need guidance. You knew as you will know again, but as you do not know now. So that stands out for me, the last sentence. You knew as you will know again, but as you do not know now. And that there's humility in admitting, I do not know now. The one that proclaims that it knows, that's not me. That's ego sending me thoughts. I subscribe to ego's thought streaming service, and I am very used to hearing those thoughts and thinking they're mine and making it a separate identity for this one. Out of it, that's all that's happening. So you knew as you will know again, but you do not know now. It's important for me to admit I don't know now, but I'm in this process of becoming willing to be guided, and that's the most important thing. Okay, God does not guide because he can share only perfect knowledge. Guidance is evaluative because it implies there is a right way and also a wrong way, one to be chosen and another to be avoided. By choosing one, you give up the other. The choice for the Holy Spirit is the choice for God. God is not in you in a literal sense. You are part of him. When you chose to leave him, he gave you a voice to speak for him because he could no longer share his knowledge with you without hindrance. Direct communication was broken because you had made another voice. So direct communication was broken because you had made another voice. I made the other voice. And when I hear it, I can remember that I made it. I can also set it down as irrelevant, take a breath, and listen, and see what comes in to replace that. And what comes in to replace that is always so helpful. So direct communication was broken because you had made another voice. But Spirit's voice is always here. It can speak to me through everybody. I'm still getting used to that. Getting used to allowing it. Because there is a pattern of wanting to be, separate or in competition. These thoughts I'm still accepting from ego. So therefore, it won't be my first thought to be open to hearing Spirit come from everybody's mouth. I'll want to think they don't know as much as I do. That's still part of the egoic identity that I'm buying, about certain things. Because that would give me a sense of value if about certain things I know more than they do. So yeah, I'm learning to set that down. I'm learning what a joke it is to try to hold on to that, because then I get to hear Spirit speaking from everybody, everywhere, all the time. What a relief that would be. So I'm remembering that. The Holy Spirit calls you both to remember and to forget. You have chosen to be in a state of opposition in which opposites are possible. As a result, there are choices you must make. In the holy state, the will is free, so that its creative power is unlimited and choice is meaningless. Freedom to choose is the same power as freedom to create, but its application is different. Choosing depends on a split mind. The Holy Spirit is one way of choosing. God did not leave his children comfortless, even though they chose to leave him. The voice they put in their minds was not the voice for his will, for which the Holy Spirit speaks. So the voice they put in their minds was not the voice for his will, for which the Holy Spirit speaks. Willingness to return to that one whole voice that is us all, that one will, is the willingness to find the thought from ego, set it down, take a moment, and open up to the willingness to let that voice come in and be the determiner, be the guide. And every day for me is about learning this, remembering this, letting it go deeper, feeling how those thoughts from ego feel, and knowing it's time to put those down. The voice they put in their minds was not the voice for his will, for which the Holy Spirit speaks. Okay. The voice of the Holy Spirit does not command, because it is incapable of arrogance. It does not demand, because it does not seek control. It does not overcome, because it does not attack. It merely reminds. It is compelling only because of what it reminds you of. It brings to your mind the other way, remaining quiet even in the midst of the turmoil you may make. The voice for God is always quiet because it speaks of peace. Peace is stronger than war because it heals. War is division, not increase. No one gains from strife. What profiteth it in a man if he gain the whole world and lose his own soul? If you listen to the wrong voice, you have lost sight of your soul. You cannot lose it, but you can not know it. It is therefore lost to you until you choose right. So this always strikes me. The voice of the Holy Spirit does not command, because it is incapable of arrogance. And the feeling of this, it really does remind, it really is very soft. It really is very quiet. And I have to come down into that quietness to hear it. And something I'm noticing is that in conversation can become like competition. And I'm learning how to come down into this quietness, true quietness, not a facsimile of quietness based on remembered ideas. I'm learning the difference. I'm learning the difference based on how it feels. And to be able to be quiet in conversation, I find it easy to come into that quiet when I'm not speaking to another human and exchanging ideas. But when I'm speaking to another human and exchanging ideas, I find I go rather easily into like a loud, insistent part of my mind that would misuse the ideas that Spirit would give me. So yeah, I'm learning to settle into that. Okay, where are we? Okay, I think we're here. The voice of the Holy Spirit does... No, I just read that. Or one paragraph after that. The Holy Spirit is your guide in choosing. He is in the part of your mind that always speaks for the right choice, because he speaks for God. He is your remaining communication with God, which you can interrupt but cannot destroy. The Holy Spirit is the way in which God's will is done on earth as it is in heaven. Both heaven and earth are in you because the call of both is in your mind. The voice for God comes from your own altars to him. These altars are not things, they are devotions. Yet you have other devotions now. Your divided devotion has given you the two voices, and you must choose at which altar you want to serve. The call you answer now is an evaluation because it is a decision. The decision is very simple. It is made on the basis of which call is worth more to you. What stands out? He is your remaining communication with God, which you can interrupt, but cannot destroy. So I like to think of that as that link is always on. Nothing can happen to that link with the voice for God. But I can interrupt it. I can cover it over. I can paint over it. I can distract myself away from it. And feeling the quality of ego's thoughts, I can know what I'm up to when I'm up to it. And I can stop. So let's see. He is your remaining communication with God, which you can interrupt, but cannot destroy. And when it comes to receiving guidance, I'm finding it most helpful to understand the feeling of believing a thought from ego, finding that thought, letting it go, coming into willingness, but then just leaving the rest open, because the point of being told what to do comes later. Sometimes it won't come right that second. And it's very soft and yet very obvious. There is no stress or tension in it. So I kind of have to wait to be in that place where the thought from Spirit can pop in with no stress or tension, and it feels like inspiration. It feels like the way is clear, and there's no struggle. And when I'm in that space, then it's easy to follow the guidance, because the guidance is just essentially the thought that Spirit inserted, I want to do this, I want to go here. The most important part is letting go of the thoughts from ego that I'm believing, because that creates the space for the thoughts from Spirit to be inserted in my mind so I can follow in that way. Okay. Where are we? Okay. My mind will always be like yours because we were created as equals. It was only my decision that gave me all power in heaven and earth. My only gift to you is to help you make the same decision. This decision is the choice to share it, because the decision itself is the decision to share. It is made by giving, and therefore the one choice that resembles true creation. I am your model for decision. By deciding for God, I showed you that this decision can be made and that you can make it. So the decision is the choice to share it, because the decision itself is the decision to share. And deciding to remember you as you are is the light. And anything the ego would put on top of you is false. That's sharing, because that's giving, because in that I remember that you're only light. And then that helps me remember that I'm only light. And nothing's more important than that. So this decision is the choice to share it, because the decision itself is the decision to share. Give all to all. We share all with everyone, because everyone's only the same thing. I have assured you that the mind that decided for me is also in you, and that you can let it change you just as it changed me. This mind is unequivocal, because it hears only one voice and answers in only one way. You are the light of the world with me. Rest does not come from sleeping, but from waking. The Holy Spirit is the call to awaken and be glad. The world is very tired, because it is the idea of weariness. Our task is the joyous one of waking it to the call for God. Everyone will answer the call of the Holy Spirit, where the sonship cannot be as one. What better vocation could there be for any part of the kingdom than to restore it to the perfect integration that can make it whole? Hear only this through the Holy Spirit within you, and teach your brothers to listen as I am teaching you. And I think the way we teach each other is by remembering the truth of what we all are. There's a level of teaching and learning, simultaneous teaching and learning, where I learn from what you are. You're not what I think you are. I shrink you down to this description. You're not that. You're this big, beautiful, glorious, endless light. And that teaches me. So as I see you as you are, that also teaches you somehow. The tight spots in our minds relax, and the light is shared, and there's a remembrance. And I don't have to know your name or be physically with you or know who you are in a separate sense for that to happen, because all minds are connected. So as we remember this about all of this, we don't even recognize who across time and space is benefiting from this resemblance, but beings do benefit from our time spent in remembrance. And as we give, we receive, so that benefit is immediately conferred back upon us. Our willingness to go deeper into that I keep wanting to say resemblance, remembrance. It deepens and it spreads. And I think that's how it happens. It doesn't happen through campaigning and through popularity and dominance. It happens through this very quiet, shared remembrance. Okay. When you are tempted by the wrong voice, call on me to remind you how to heal by sharing my decision and making it stronger. As we share this goal, we increase its power to attract the whole sonship. Yeah, there it is. And to bring it back into the oneness in which it was created. Remember that yoke means joined together, and burden means message. Let us restate my yoke is easy and my burden is light in this way. Let us join together, for my message is light. And let us join together, for my message is light. We are joined together, and we are light. So every moment spent remembering that helps me when I seem to have to stride back forth into the illusion and doing something. If I can use my perceived clock time to remember, let us join together, for my message is light. We are already joined. We've always been joined, and nothing can damage how we're joined. And we're all light. We're all very simple. So when I walk into the complexity of the world, then my willingness to hear Spirit speak through you plainly and clearly is more present. I laugh because I forget it easily. I think I'm in this separate world with separate characters, and there's this subtle need to dominate. I think that's still there, but I can also feel it being highlighted, and I can feel the edge of it, the edges of that melting. That feels really good. I have enjoined you to behave as I behaved, but we must respond to the same mind to do this. This mind is the Holy Spirit, whose will is for God always. He teaches you how to keep me as the model for your thought and to behave like me as a result. The power of our joint motivation is beyond belief, but not beyond accomplishment. What we can accomplish together has no limits because the call for God is the call to the unlimited. Child of God, my message is for you, to hear and give away as you answer the Holy Spirit within you. And let's see, child of God, my message is for you, to hear and give away as you answer the Holy Spirit within you. So when I go in, when I feel the presence of an egoic thought, and I realize I've strayed away from my true center, I have to go in now, and I find the thought from ego that I allowed to lure me away, and I give that to Spirit, like, I know I don't want this. Here's the scorpion, you deal with it. And Spirit does. I go back to the center and I rest there. I know nothing's more important than that. That's how we give away this call for God. That's how we share the message, just by going in. And then we may be doing overt sharing of the message, like you could call this a sharing of the message, but more and more every day I find the most important way to share the message is just to go in. Because in that vibration of harmony and where the divine will is, I am making that available to everybody. I know that. It's like I remember that. So sure, I'll, as a human, talk to other humans too, but I really feel the power of this that's going in this network that you access, where all minds are joined, and as you allow the light to pour into your mind and see all other minds as light, it's like this activation happens. It's very beautiful and very helpful. Okay, section 3, the guide to salvation. The way to recognize your brother is by recognizing the Holy Spirit in him. I have already said that the Holy Spirit is the bridge for the transfer of perception to knowledge, so we can use the terms as if they were related because in his mind they are. This relationship must be in his mind because unless it were, the separation between the two ways of thinking would not be open to healing. He is part of the Holy Trinity because his mind is partly yours and also partly God's. This needs clarification, not in statement, but in experience. I like that. This needs clarification, not in statement, but in experience. Every experience I have is an opportunity to go into this shared mind and to receive guidance because I've set aside the thoughts of the ego to be able to receive it. This needs clarification, not in statement, but in experience. So our experiences always help us. The Holy Spirit is the idea of healing. Being thought, the idea gains as it is shared. Being the call for God, it is also the idea of God. Since you are part of God, it is also the idea of yourself, as well as all of his creations. The idea of the Holy Spirit shares the property of other ideas because it follows the laws of the universe of which it is a part. It is strengthened by being given away. It increases in you as you give it to your brother. Your brother does not have to be aware of the Holy Spirit in himself or in you for this miracle to occur. He may have dissociated the call for God just as you have. This dissociation is healed in both of you as you become aware of the call for God in him and thus acknowledge its being. So there's this great big... I just pressed pause. I think I did it just now. But if there's a skip, that's what it is. I don't think I missed any text. Anyhow, I must have needed that pause. What did I want to say? Your brother does not have to be aware of the Holy Spirit in himself or in you for this miracle to occur. So just remembering the great big beautiful gift that's in everybody makes us more aware of this presence in ourselves, and then more willing to subside into it, rest in it, and allow this beautiful presence to dictate everything, to give us all of our direction. Your brother does not have to be aware of the Holy Spirit in himself or in you for this miracle to occur, this shift in perception. There are two diametrically opposed ways of seeing your brother. They must both be in your mind, because you are the perceiver. They must also be in his, because you are perceiving him. See him through the Holy Spirit in his mind, and you will recognize him in yours. What you acknowledge in your brother, you are acknowledging in yourself, and what you share, you strengthen. So see him through the Holy Spirit in his mind, and you will recognize him in yours. That's how I bring forth the presence of the Holy Spirit in my own mind. As I look at you, I see you through the lens of the Spirit that's alive in you. That's how I look at you. That's how I give a gift to myself, because then the presence of the Spirit will be more obvious to me, more dominant in my own mind. So any meeting in mind, anytime I think of you, speak to you, meet with you physically, it's that opportunity to give a gift to myself by seeing you as you are. So let's see. See him through the Holy Spirit in his mind, and you will recognize him in yours. The voice of the Holy Spirit is weak in you. That is why you must share it. It must be increased in strength before you can hear it. It is impossible to hear it in yourself while it is so weak in your mind. It is not weak in itself, but it is limited by your unwillingness to hear it. If you make the mistake of looking for the Holy Spirit in yourself alone, your thoughts will frighten you, because by adopting the ego's viewpoint, you are undertaking an ego-alien journey with the ego as guide. This is bound to produce fear. So it is impossible to hear it in yourself while it is so weak in your mind. And so when I think of you, remembering that it's the Spirit in you that I'm connecting with, or when I speak with you, being willing to have the voice of guidance come through you, because there's this defensiveness still in my mind that would prevent that would block that. So every day and every experience is my opportunity to feel that defensiveness and let it go, so I can hear Spirit speaking through you to me. Okay, delay is of the ego because time is its concept. Both time and delay are meaningless in eternity. I have said before that the Holy Spirit is God's answer to the ego. Everything of which the Holy Spirit reminds you is in direct opposition to the ego's notions, because true and false perceptions are themselves opposed. The Holy Spirit has the task of undoing what the ego has made. He undoes it at the same level on which the ego operates, where the mind would be unable to understand the change. Delay is of the ego because time is its concept. So I can remember that time is the ego's baby, the ego's toy. But what can I do with time? I can give it to Spirit and say, Spirit, you can be in charge of my perception of this. So when I'm starting to feel tense over an issue related to time, I can remember that. Spirit, you handle time. I've placed it in the wrong hands. How do I know? By how I feel. I'm going to give it to you now. Delay is of the ego because time is its concept. I have repeatedly emphasized that one level of the mind is not understandable to another. So it is with the ego and the Holy Spirit, with time and eternity. Eternity is an idea of God, so the Holy Spirit understands it perfectly. Time is a belief of the ego, so the lower mind, which is the ego's domain, accepts it without question. The only aspect of time that is eternal is now. Well, that's important. The only aspect of time that is eternal is now. Because when I feel a not good feeling, it means I've accepted a thought from ego, I'm thinking it's real. I'm thinking it's true. I'm making a world out of it. That's how I paint my world. And if I release the idea and return to the now and stay open, I'll receive whatever I need to move through time in peace until time is no more. The only aspect of time that is eternal is now. The Holy Spirit is the mediator between the interpretations of the ego and the knowledge of the Spirit. His ability to deal with symbols enables him to work with ego's beliefs in its own language. His ability to look beyond symbols into eternity enables him to understand the laws of God for which he speaks. He can therefore perform the function of reinterpreting what the ego makes, not by destruction, but by understanding. Understanding is light, and light leads to knowledge. The Holy Spirit is in light because he is in you who are light, but you yourself do not know this. It is therefore the task of the Holy Spirit to reinterpret you on behalf of God. His ability to deal with symbols enables him to work with the ego's beliefs in its own language. So this is getting shown to me. Everything I perceive as a symbol, the body is a map of symbols, everything's a symbol. And when I don't feel good, I've taken a symbol and I've given it to ego. And I've said, here, interpret this for me. And this is not wise. And I can tell by how I'm feeling, this is not wise. But I always get a chance to begin again. And I can say, okay, not a good idea. Let me take this symbol, whatever it is I'm thinking about, and take a beat and place it in Spirit's hands. And say, now you interpret this symbol for me. I'm open, I'm listening. Whatever ego said before, I'm giving that to you because you know what to do with that. Now you interpret this symbol for me. Whatever I seem to be looking at, help me see it as it truly is. Okay, let's see. I think we're here. You cannot understand yourself alone. This is because you have no meaning apart from your rightful place in the sonship. And the rightful place of the sonship is God. This is your life, your eternity, and yourself. It is of this that the Holy Spirit reminds you. It is this that the Holy Spirit sees. This vision frightens the ego because it is so calm. Peace is the ego's greatest enemy because according to its interpretation of reality, war is the guarantee of its survival. The ego becomes strong in strife. Yeah, I think I want to repeat that sentence before. Peace is the ego's greatest enemy because although its interpretation, because according to its interpretation of reality, war is the guarantee of its survival. So that feeling of competition that can enter in conversation, that's ego taking it over. And that's war. It's a form of war. Very subtle feelings of domination or competition. I've been noticing lately. And, maybe they won't be subtle next week. They'll be super loud. But right now, it feels like, oh, I understand. I've entered this playing field and I can stop and I can return to peace and I can wait and I can be quiet, and that's everything I need. Everything I need is there in the quiet, and that's different. Ego, there's nothing ego can do with that. That doesn't feed it in any way. But from this very quiet, calm field can come any thoughts or guidance that I need as I seem to move through time. Peace is the ego's greatest enemy because according to its interpretation of reality, war is the guarantee of its survival. Yeah. The ego becomes strong in strife. If you believe there is strife, you will react viciously because the idea of danger has entered your mind. The idea itself is an appeal to the ego. I just turned the page. Okay, the Holy Spirit is as vigilant as the ego to the call of danger, opposing it with his strength, just as the ego welcomes it. The Holy Spirit counters this welcome by welcoming peace. Eternity and peace are as closely related as are time and war. Perception derives meaning from relationships. Those you accept are the foundations of your beliefs. The separation is merely another term for split mind. The ego is the symbol of separation, just as the Holy Spirit is the symbol of peace. What you perceive in others, you are strengthening in yourself. I can't say that enough. What you perceive in others, you are strengthening in yourself. So when I think of you today, any you, I can pay attention to what I'm perceiving, and I can know I am strengthening that in myself. That's something I ignore a lot. Less than I used to, but still a lot. So I welcome seeing this. What you perceive in others, you are strengthening in yourself. You may let your mind misperceive, but the Holy Spirit lets your mind reinterpret its own misperceptions. The Holy Spirit is the perfect teacher. He uses only what your mind already understands to teach you that you do not understand it. The Holy Spirit can deal with a reluctant learner without going counter to his mind, because part of it is still for God. Despite the ego's attempts to conceal this part, it is still much stronger than the ego, although the ego does not recognize it. So that's very reassuring to me. Despite the ego's attempts to conceal this part, it is still much stronger than the ego, although the ego does not recognize it. So number one, the part of my mind that is for the Holy Spirit is much stronger than ego, even though I keep running into ego again and again, every day. And the ego doesn't know this. The ego is still going to send me those thoughts, send me those thoughts. And I need to just know that they're nothing, they're not true, and they're not helpful. The Holy Spirit recognizes it perfectly because it is his own dwelling place, the place in the mind where he is at home. You are at home there too because it is a place of peace, and peace is of God. You who are a part of God are not at home, except in his peace. If peace is eternal, you are at home only in eternity. The ego made the world as it perceives it, but the Holy Spirit, the reinterpreter of what the ego made, sees the world as a teaching device for bringing you home. The Holy Spirit must perceive time and reinterpret it into the timeless. He must work through opposites because he must work with and for a mind that is in opposition. Correct and learn, and be open to learning. You have not made truth, but truth can still set you free. Look as the Holy Spirit looks and understand as he understands. His understanding looks back to God in remembrance of me. He is in communion with God always, and he is part of you. He is your guide to salvation because he holds the remembrance of things past and to come and brings them to the present. He holds this gladness gently in your mind, asking only that you increase it in his name by sharing it to increase his joy in you. So what stands out to me there is the ego made the world as it perceives it, but the Holy Spirit, the reinterpreter of what the ego made, sees the world as a teaching device for bringing you home. And if I can remember to see it that way, what is everything my senses tell me, everything my memory suggests to me? It's only a teaching device for bringing me home. That's all it is. The ego made the world as it perceives it, but the Holy Spirit, the reinterpreter of what the ego made, sees the world as a teaching device for bringing you home. So the world is the ego's playground where it gets to be real. This separate Julie identity is a real thing, and it could be better or worse than something else. It could, achieve and glory in its achievements, but it's not that. It's just a teaching device for bringing me home. All right, that's it for section 3. Thanks for joining me today.